Yeah. Good morning. Sorry for the delay. We just want to make sure folks can actually see and hear us online before we start. Good morning. I'm Felicia Marcus, Chair of the Board. Today is Tuesday, June 16th at 9:15 a.m. The meeting's called to order. To my left, Vice Chair Fran Spivey Weber. To her left, Board Member Dee D'Adamo. To my far right, but not really my far right. To my far right, Board Member Stephen Moore, and soon Board Member Tam Dodek will appear, at least if those beverages didn't just appear mysteriously. She'll be here for them. Ms. Turgovich, can you please introduce the staff that's assisting today?
Good morning. I'm Karen Turgovich, Chief Deputy Director. To my left is Jonathan Bishop, the other Chief Deputy Director. And to his left is Michael Lawfer, Chief Counsel. And assisting us today are Janine Townsend and Courtney Tyler.
And where is Mr. Howard?
Mr. Howard is backpacking on a long trek far away from here.
He's investigating surface waters and depleted streams throughout the Sierras?
Absolutely. Well, we hope...
He's going to be doing delineations, or is he going to be doing assessments while he's out?
We hope assessments, not deep dives.
That's good. He'll come back refreshed, and then we'll all fall apart when he gets back. Great. Emergency evacuation procedure for those of you who aren't familiar with this building. Oh, look at that. If you hear an emergency noise, it's an emergency probably, or a test, please gather your stuff and your friends and head out carefully. We gather in Cesar Chavez Park in the corner near, I always get that wrong, near 10th and J. And if you want to join us and know when the all clear sounds, meet us there. You can obviously go wherever you would like. The meeting's being webcast and recorded, so please speak into the microphone when you come up. The key is to be so close to it that you know that it's actually amplifying your voice. Most importantly, we want to be sure that people on the webcast can hear you. Don't get so close as to touch it. It gives a popping sound, and if you want folks to understand what you're saying over the waves, or even record it if it's scintillating and quotable, it's better without the pops. Please take any cell phones or noise-making devices and put them on silent or turn them off. I think that's it for the basics. Other than that, I don't know whether to start with SaveOurWater.com or Go Warriors, but I'll say both of those today to start the day off. So we have a fairly hefty agenda in front of us. We tried as hard as we can to really test the timelines. Hopefully we will not be terribly late today. I'm saying that for Warrior fans or Cleveland Cavalier fans, but we will take as long as it takes us to get through the agenda thoughtfully. We will be taking a couple of short breaks, and we'll undoubtedly take some sort of a lunch break, and I'll make an assessment as to whether that's an hour or less, depending on where we are, somewhere in that lunch range, somewhere in between 12 and 2. Unless somebody has a particular time they need to take a lunch break. Okay, great. With that, we're on to public forum, and the public forum is a time when we'll hear from anyone who wishes to address us on something that is not on the agenda today. Do we have any? None today. Okay. Next, we'll consider adoption of the June 2nd board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Next, we have uncontested items, which on your agenda are listed as items number 2 and 3. I wanted to ask, I know we have a couple of people here for item number 5, but I wasn't sure whether they needed to speak. Anyone who wishes to speak on item 5, just raise your hand so I can get a count if you really want to. No cards. So then I'm going to suggest that we take number 5 as uncontested, if that's all right with folks. So 2, 3, and 5, if that's all right with everyone.
So moved.
Second.
I just would note that staff was very responsive in our direction, I thought, on the West Valley item, and I'm pretty excited about these pilot tests that are going on for water treatment. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of hard work in between. Thank you for acknowledging that. Great. So all in favor?
Aye.
Carries. And now we're on to item number 4, informational item on the drought.
While people are coming up to the Central Valley item, I wanted to acknowledge, because that's more good basin planning going on in terms of getting the water quality objectives up to date. So thank you to Region 5.
Ready? Hello. Good morning, Chair Marcus and board members. I'm Diane Riddle. I'm an environmental program manager in the hearings and Bay Delta section. And I'm going to provide a brief update regarding Bay Delta related drought matters. I think, as you're aware, the Bureau of Reclamation and the Department of Water Resources submitted a renewal of their temporary urgency change petition on May 21st. And again, that's to modify Bay Delta flow and water quality standards, and specifically what they're requesting for the remainder of the year is a modification for Delta outflows during July, Sacramento River salinity through August 15th, and Rio Vista flow requirements on the Sacramento River through November. So we're currently working on an order for those potential changes, and we should have that order prepared prior to July 1st when they start to need the changes. So in addition, last week we issued, or Saturday specifically, we issued a notice for a workshop on June 24th to discuss drought-related operations by the State Water Project and Central Valley Project in the Delta for the remainder of the summer and fall. Specifically, we intend to discuss Sacramento River temperature issues and potential needed modifications to operations as a result of potential changes to the Sacramento temperature operation activities. So again, that's January 24th, and we expect that to be a lively discussion.
June.
Oh, I'm sorry, June, I'm sorry. June.
I'm
backing up. I'm getting ready for next year.
It's hard to get those J months right, but yeah, no, it's a horrid situation that I know you're all trying to do your best to juggle with the other agencies, and we'll look forward to hearing what you come up with. I think, had hoped that this could be forestalled until next year without rain. So it's pretty horrifying that we're in this place with no good solution. So we'll really look forward to hearing your thoughts on it.
With that, if there are no questions, I'll turn it over to Kathy to provide an update on curtailments.
Good morning, Chair Marcus and board members. I'm Kathy Maroka. I'm program manager for our enforcement section, and we lead the curtailment efforts. First, I wanted to describe the curtailment that we did on Friday of last week. It was to the Sacramento River, San Joaquin River watersheds and Delta. 1903 water right priority and later. So it was the pre-1914 water rights, often referred to as senior rights. So we haven't curtailed this class of rights since the 77-78 drought. It was quite exceptional that we have such poor water conditions that we had to do this action. Now, I wanted to make the curtailment program a little easier for the public to understand. So on your screens, you'll see a new work product that we've just developed and posted online. It's a summary so that everybody knows what water rights are curtailed currently, which ones the curtailments have been lifted. If you could scroll down a little bit, there have been some water rights down a little bit more that you can see, like Deer Creek, Antelope Creek, where we've actually had specific fisheries curtailments lifted. So in addition to our news on adding new curtailments based on priority dates of rights, we've had changes in status on fishery curtailments.
That's because it rained.
No, it's because the target fish species were no longer present in those stream reaches. And so once the fish are not in those stream reaches, then we can lift at that point. And then later, as they become present again, then we would reinstall that curtailment. And fish curtailments are they target specific flow numbers like 35 CFS, 25 CFS, whatever the target number is for the species to move through that reach. They just operate differently than a water right priorities type curtailment, which is where there's not enough water for the affected right holder classes. So they just have a different method of operation. But I thought it would be interesting news for you to let you know that there actually has been some change to help parties out in those specific watersheds who want to divert for their agricultural purposes. So
As we've discussed, that's by design.
it is by design where we don't, we use the tools when necessary, and the moment we are able to provide relief to the water diverter community, we provide that relief.
And in a matter of, and it isn't that people are waiting around for a week to get the decision. It
No.
happens.
It comes out the minute that we get the word from the fishery agencies that the species is no longer present in that stream reach. We blast it out through our email blast to the parties so that they know immediately that now they can go ahead and resume diversion. I want to add a caveat though. Some of these watersheds are subject to multiple curtailments. Now if you were Antelope Creek, tributary of the Sacramento River system, if you happen to have been a post-1914 water right holder, the fishery curtailment lifted, but your general water availability style curtailment had remained in place. And so if you were a category of right holder such as riparian who wasn't subject to a secondary curtailment, then yes, you could go ahead and start using for your agricultural purposes. So because the curtailments stack on each other, there are different types of curtailments. There's, I've explained before, water right condition like term 91 curtailments, water availability, general type curtailments, and fish curtailments. So, if you're still subject to any other curtailments, then you're subject to a curtailment. But it was good news for some users. So that's my bright spot for the day.
Could you scroll back? Just want to look here. So Deer Antelope Mill, I didn't see.
Mill was subject to private agreement, so we didn't do the curtailment.
Okay. And then how about other watersheds like the Russian? Isn't there a notice of potential curtailment that went out?
On the Russian River, we are working on the tributaries for fishery issues. So yes, we provided notice regarding that. This is the, on our webpage previously, you had to go to your specific watershed, click on it, and go through iterations to find out information. So this summary is just intended to tell you if you have a curtailment in place. And because Russian is coming before the board for action tomorrow, I don't have a curtailment in place. The minute we have one in place, it will go on the summary sheet here.
Oh, right. And actually, staff isn't even proposing a curtailment anyway at this time.
It's a regulation.
I was referring to supply demand, curtailment based on, regular curtailment.
Right. And the Russian isn't subject to one yet. It's on our watch list. Their reservoir storage was better this year than last year. They've had changes in the upper end of the watershed where there's less water being imported from Eel River than last year, and so we're watching it because of this.
But have you sent out a notice of potential curtailment to those water users?
No, not yet.
Oh,
Let
okay.
me just clarify, Karen Trigovich. We did send out 2 notices earlier in the year to all water right holders. An initial notice in January, a subsequent notice in April as things began looking bleaker and bleaker. So they were the recipients, as it was a general notice of those earlier letters.
Yeah, and just so you know, too, I've initiated a new staff-level work product to better track where we're heading on our curtailments. So I have my staff now reporting in weekly to me for all the watersheds that we've been watching with data on what flows trigger curtailment and how close we are. And so we're very carefully watching those watersheds.
Good. This is helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I did want to report back to you as to, how is our response rate on the curtailment issue? We are too early yet to have the pre-14 response rate reissued last Friday, and they have 7 days to respond to us and file their curtailment certification form. But I can report on the post-1914s. And so on the post-1914s, if you look at Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Delta combined, we're at an overall response rate of 31%. That breaks down to Sacramento River, watershed, and Delta. We have got a 35% response rate, and San Joaquin, it's 22% response rate. So overall, what this means is if you're looking at the total estimated water demand represented by those responders, not the non-responders, responders, from start of curtailment in May through September, that's 7.3 million acre foot represented by the responders. If you were to look at a whole calendar year, it's 19.6 million acre foot. But that's less representative. We can't tell what date will lift curtailment. So the 7.3 million acre foot gives you a general picture for the summer months.
But
through
wait,
September.
what percentage is that of the total?
Well, of the total demand overall throughout this watersheds, I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, so then I know it's a big number for
Yeah.
the watershed, but it doesn't help us understand. So I thought what you were trying to say, help me understand this 31%. Does the 31% cover 90-something% of the water, or is it closer to 30% of the water?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. It's 7.3 million acre foot of the water, so it's very significant because that indicates to me that we had a lot of large responders, large size class.
Right. I think we need those stats to understand
Happy to
what
do
we
'em.
need to do on enforcement.
Happy to do them for you. Yeah. My staff, unfortunately, last week was incredibly busy on the curtailment. I have the one modeler running everything for me. I'm like, oh, goody.
Well,
for the San Joaquin, Sacramento.
Right. But the key is to let us know what you need in that situation to be able to do it, because for people's confidence.
Yes.
If all you put out is that number, it's alarming.
Yeah, it
And
is
would
alarming.
suggest you've got it. I know you're going to do all kinds of inspections, but you want to prioritize them so you're not spending time on the 1 acre foot person. So those are stats that are actually very important to have this have any meaning to us, whether we should be alarmed or whether this actually covers, by far the lion's share.
You betcha. And we'll get that for you. Okay. And then I wanted to talk briefly about how it's going on our inspection effort. Okay, so this year we got additional authorities from the governor's office that we can go on unannounced inspections. We like to call them our knock-knock inspections. Knock, knock, State Water Board. So anyway, what we're doing right now is staff has expressed some concerns regarding this. They're worried about some safety issues, so we're testing 3 methods of inspection right now, and we're going to get some statistics together on that. So our traditional method is we phone people to prearrange inspections. We have a second traditional method where we drop them a letter. We say we're going to be in your neighborhood. We're going to go and inspect your property on so-and-so date unless you call to schedule a different date. And then we have the inspection authority, our knock-knock authority. So we're running a brief test to see how all those stack up with one another. But while we're running the test, we're doing a lot of phone calling to prearrange inspections. What we want to find out, part of this is, how often will we have a meaningful contact from the unannounced inspection? How often would there be no one home or no ability to gather information based on visual observation from the road, a public road, as to whether irrigation's occurring, things like that. So we want better information, and we're gathering that information. So for the week of June the 9th, as of June 9th, we had done 117 phone notice type inspections. We had done 15 knock inspections where we showed up unannounced. We did find that for 3 of those, no one was home. We had done 0 warrant inspections. And so because this is really the beginning of our inspection season, we hadn't yet mailed out a lot of letters for contact to respond that way. So
You start, I'm trying to go back to last year. Do you start with a letter to them saying we haven't heard from you? you really need to respond?
When there's no phone response, that is how we did it last year. So
Start with the phone call.
we started with the phone call as our exclusive method last year. But this year, we're doing the 3 methods all at once to test. So we're doing the contact letter and phone calls, and obviously if there's no response to phone call, we do a letter, but we're trying just starting with letter also to get better statistics on what works.
I presume we had a conversation about this last year, prioritizing those who have not responded at all, and then you'll be also doing geographical spot checks on folks who have responded, and you'll be
Right.
targeting the larger water rights holders versus the teeny guys.
Yeah, we have a certain target level that we're going down to in the different watersheds, yes.
I'm wanting to understand, though, your question, I thought, was if somebody hadn't responded, are they receiving automatically, are they receiving a letter, a second letter?
We are scheduling our inspections prioritizing first by had not responded, and then how many inspectors we have available to launch out in the field, because now at this point, we're getting most of them trained up.
But I guess, yeah, the issue is, why not just send another letter?
A second letter,
too?
yeah. I mean, it just reminds me of somebody not paying their utility bill or not paying their credit card bill. Sometimes you can make a mistake the first round. They should know. There's been a lot of press on this. But, you know, maybe a second letter with in red.
Yeah, with
you
that,
have not responded.
We really mean
You're
it.
subject to inspection authority.
Right, and our letter basically tells them that, you know, if we don't get response, we may seek warrant. So, you know, the follow-up to non-response is that it gets a little more ratcheted up. So we are doing recontacts for non-response because, you know, there's a lot of parties don't want to return our phone calls. We have a poor rate of return on the phone calls, so we do follow up.
Barbara Evoy, Division of Water Rights. We certainly can send a follow-up letter. That's we have thousands of people that we have contacted, and mailing is always a difficult thing to compare against the database, but that isn't going to be difficult to.
Easier than making phone calls. to
Right,
thousands
so
of
we
people.
can certainly do that. We had hoped, of course, that since it was such an easy process to check the box to say you've curtailed, that people would do that rather quickly and send it in. And, you know, but we certainly can send another letter.
And that basically kind of in a nutshell where we're at right now. Just to let you know, we have been training our staff on how to conduct inspections. Every 2 weeks we were bringing in more staff because all the Department of Water Resources staff is deployed now and trained is my understanding. We have interdivisional like loaned resources that we've been taking out in the field. And so our program, we began in early May with just a few deployments, and now we're looking very good on our deployment rate.
How many people roughly do you expect to have in the field once everyone's trained?
Let's see, it's 8 Department of Water Resources staff, 21 others, I do believe, for the curtailment portion of the effort. Part of our drought effort has to center on complaints also. Last year we did experience a tripling of complaints. So one of my field units handles just complaints. But they have to share some of those to some of the other staff too because the volume is very high.
Chair Marcus, before we move on, if I could just give a brief conservation update. I want to just make sure that everyone's aware that we did post up on our website last week, or I believe it was last week, the updated tiers, so the list of water suppliers considered to be urban water suppliers subject to the tiered conservation standard. We posted up the revised list, which reflected all of the changes in residential gallons per capita per day that were submitted by urban water suppliers over the last month. We gave them until May 31st to submit any changes, along with documentation that provides the substantiation behind the claim and the change. We've reviewed all of that information. And so what is now posted on our website reflects the tiers for the remainder or the duration of the emergency regulation.
Yesterday was the deadline for folks turning in their May numbers, correct?
Correct. It would have been the deadline for the May numbers, and we will be presenting those at the first July board meeting. We are going to, since June is the first full month of implementation under the new emergency regulation, we are going to do our best to accelerate our review of the June figures when they come in mid-July. I know there'll be a lot of interest in that information.
Well, of course, people who have good numbers are bragging early.
Yeah, the Fresno numbers were nice.
But there are some braggable numbers.
Yeah, there are some fabulous efforts going on out there. I believe I saw that Fresno has really implemented and made some incredible strides, and they are even beyond their conservation standard at this point. So it can be done.
Right, and you'll be seeing it in the Santa Clara Valley, as their target is nearly twice ours for some of their users because they're trying to protect their groundwater basin. Can we, in the presentation at the beginning of next month, do you mind asking the team to really highlight a bunch of those efforts, not just putting names, bullets, but actually some stories about how they did it to paint the picture?
We'll certainly do our best. We're just wrapping up now as well all of the requests for placement into the 4% tier, if you'll recall. So they've got a lot of ongoing work. But we will, if you're aware of any stories, if you can pass them on to us, if anyone's listening that would like to be highlighted, feel free to forward us information. But we'll certainly pull a list together.
We could pull a list, and if you know, there are more than a few of them, but you could even have a little panel of a few of them talking about what and why, and that might be educational for the folks that are having more challenges in turning their battleships.
And then just a reminder that the rate and pricing structure workshop is on the 8th.
Oh, I thought it was the 7th. It's the 8th? I've been telling everybody it's the 7th. Okay, now I have to remember who I told. I feel like Mel Brooks. I'll have to write them a note.
I said we were voting on something today that we're not. So, I mean, you know.
Well, there's so much going on, but all right. Yeah, right. All right. Well, that's great. I appreciate that. Also, I hope folks saw a very nice op-ed by John Coleman and Kathy Teagues of Aqua in the Sacramento Bee today. And folks need to remember to go to SaveOurWater.com. I'm hoping that we're working with SaveOurWater.com for the summer to really focus, given that it's so key to get our major conservation gains now. So we really need to be doubling down on publicity. Are we doing a coordinated thing with them?
We are coordinating with them through the governor's office, and the focus this summer is really going to be on the areas that have a ways to go. So that's a lot of our Central Valley communities. So there's a limited amount of funding. There's additional funding, but it is limited, and they're looking to make that really count in the areas that have the greatest gains to be made. And I'd also like to report that we had some really excellent meetings with the Spanish television stations, with Univision and Telemundo, and they are very active within the Hispanic communities, and they've reached out to us, and we're working together to try to be able to move the message out in more ways.
Yeah, when I was down in LA doing something with the mayor's office, one of the anchors from Univision was there, and apparently they did a very well-received drought series in Los Angeles that had tremendous viewership. It sort of tops anything that anyone else has done. So I'm thrilled to hear that.
They have some very effective community outreach and tools, and we hope to take advantage of that.
Great. One other question before we leave this. I see Mr. George here. Are you up for giving an update on the voluntary? I know you and I talked about it a bit last week, but on the subject of curtailments, the voluntary would be helpful for us to hear about.
Thank you. Yes, Michael George, Delta Watermaster, and we are continuing to process the applications that we've received. But because of the time it's taking to catalog them, we've actually started the verification program ahead of having the entire suite of applications cataloged. So we are in the field the day after tomorrow with some scheduled verification inspections. And we will also, as we're out in the field, we'll be doing what Kathy described as knock-knocks, to the extent that we see something that is of interest or seems to be different than what we're expecting. So we're in that verification process, but the very significant efforts going on in the Delta, which are having the effect of significantly reducing demands on the system.
Your efforts earlier this year to engender a response rate for the information order were very remarkable, 97% response. How is the response rate going with the applications to participate in the voluntary riparian reductions of diversions?
It's impossible to give you a percentage because we know how many applications we've got, but each application may have many statements of diversion and use and many parcels. So that's why the cataloging is taking longer than, frankly, we had anticipated. It appears to me, though, that we've got a very substantial majority of all the riparian lands in the central and south delta where the program was targeted. We're getting a high response rate. Actually, in setting up some of these inspections, we've got people who are eager to have us out there to see what's going on. And in fact, in response to one of the requests that I made for a meeting on Thursday, we got neighbors calling in saying, well, while you're out there, come and see us. So we're going to try and do that as well.
Knock knock turns into show and tell.
Exactly. Yeah, people are proud of what they're doing, and they want the story to get out that the Delta is not just business as usual. Thank you.
Item number 6. And then we'll take a break after item number 6 before we go to item number 7.
Good morning, Chair Marcus, Vice Chair Spivey Weber, members of the board. I'm Dan Newton, Program Manager for the Water Recycling Funding Program in DFA. To my left is David Balgobin. He's one of the engineers in the Water Recycling Unit. And to his left is Bethany Payne, Office of Chief Counsel. The Water Recycling Funding Program is proud to present to you today the Water Recycling Guidelines for your consideration and recommendation for adoption. Since the passage of Prop 1, which provided the program basically with $725 million, actually that's in Chapter 9 for both recycled water and desal. The governor's budget proposes $625 million of that dedicated to the State Water Board for recycled water. The balance will be handled through the Department of Water Rights for desal activities. To administer the Prop 1 funding, Proposition 1 required the passage of guidelines. And so that's what we've been working on since November. We went through an aggressive stakeholder process, and we've held 4 workshops. Actually, on March 12th, we released the guidelines in draft form and held 4 workshops after that. The workshops were well attended. We received a lot of feedback, and we also participated in a lot of speaking events and conferences, had an aggressive outreach program. We took the comments received through the workshops through various fashions, a lot of formal comments, also some emails and discussions following, and incorporated those comments to produce what is presented in the item today, the final draft version of the amended guidelines. We had 2 very recent changes, and there is an electronic version of an errata sheet available to you for review that addressed one omission that we had during our mini revisions, where we omitted the term of the loan, which is a 30-year term and a half, the general obligation bond rate. Found that important to add back in. The other was based on a meeting with the National Resource Defense Council and California Coastkeeper Alliance, in which we had a brief meeting, and they provided some recommendations. We made a clarification and a better alignment with Proposition 1 on the Bay Delta diversions and in-stream diversions to reduce the reliance upon those with potable reuse projects. So that's what you see before you on the errata sheet. I'll provide a brief summary, just a high level of some of the highlights of the guidelines. We offer a planning grant through this funding. This is 50% match up to $75,000. We did receive a lot of comments on that. Unfortunately, Proposition 1 is referenced by Proposition 13 and limits us to those terms. However, I want to add that the State Revolving Fund provides some very nice planning and design loan opportunities along with some principal forgiveness. We also have construction loans, very SURF-like. There's $300 million available for that through Prop 1, 30-year term, half the GO bond rate, continuous process. And so we're taking advantage of that loan and matching it with SURF. We're leveraging the funds. And so this Proposition 1 recycled water money works well and plays well with the State Revolving Fund. Another interesting note on the loan aspect of Proposition 1 is that $300 million, the repayment stream, comes back to the State Water Board and generates more grant and more loan. And so this program has a wonderful lifespan to it. As I've mentioned in the past, Proposition 13, which passed in 2000, we still have some residual funds from that. This is a much larger value, and we expect a long lifespan. And that suits very well the nature of recycled water projects, the due diligence required up front and user buy-in, in that they don't need to rush to us for grant. We're going to have a good revenue source of grant in the years to come. Also, we have construction grant, and we came up with 35% match, not to exceed $15 million. Again, falling back on the State Revolving Fund, well, let me back up a bit. The 35% to $15 million was based upon spreading the funds equitably. We worked with the Water Reuse Association to gain a knowledge of needs on the immediate term, along with CASA and our own knowledge base. We fund an awful lot of recycled water through the State Water Board, and we developed a needs list to help identify how we could equitably spread that funding. Secondly, the State Revolving Fund, the interest rate really starts picking up right around $50 million worth of a project. And so the grants basically are the best incentive for the smaller projects. The State Revolving Fund, the subsidy is really robust on the larger projects. And so that limits of the grant are the sweet spot, so to speak, between the transition of the two programs. They dovetail very well.
When you talk about the sweet spot, that relates to things like how it hits the ratepayer ultimately in terms of the rates that are set.
Absolutely. Both hit the ratepayer right up front. The rates are established at the beginning to support that debt. So regardless of the grant or the low interest loan, they are both a subsidy up front. And so with that, we basically are using the State Revolving Fund as a program to leverage with the Prop 1. One application to the division will provide for access to those funds and other funds as necessary through our project managers. And in summary, I believe we've recommended a program that well suits the various types of recycled water projects in the state. And along with the SURF, provides some very nice financial packages for both very large and very small projects. And unless I've missed something with my team here. No, not at this point. In summary, that's...
Not only large, small, but also urban and ag.
And that's my reference to the various type of projects. There's distinctly two different sectors of recycled water use. And I believe we've captured both of those nicely.
And there are a number of details because you had existing recycled water guidelines, and you took this opportunity through the Prop 1 process to really refine these. And there's some significant upgrades that I see. For instance, the really bringing forward the longer term loan going from 20-year to 30-year, really recognizing the useful life of these projects more by using that type of term of financing. That makes a huge difference in terms of when it comes back to the ratepayer and the burden placed on local communities. And there are others, but that's just one of many. Also, just the processing time for getting through our process and the CEQA requirements and things like that. Is there anything else you would point out that have been, you would think, process improvements?
Absolutely. Through the State Revolving Fund, we've had a tremendous effort to streamline, and this one application will cover both. We do encourage agencies to approach very early so that we can help them develop their project to reduce the false starts rather than show up with a package ready to go. We want to participate in that process, but along with that, we're very we've done a lot of streamlining efforts.
And there's some synergies with the other, because we have these other pots of money with Proposition 1. I won't name them all, but the process that we've gone through to update these guidelines are also commensurate with those other guidelines.
Correct. For instance, the Small Community Wastewater Program.
Very, very exciting. About a year ago, we approved the $800 million for the 1% for recycled water projects. We've got $300 million of that pretty locked down, and the rest of it is being vied for. Does this Proposition 1 really expands that $800 million to a much larger amount?
Absolutely. A lot more interest in moving quickly, and which I might add, we have been accepting applications since roughly February, encouraging agencies not to wait for this subsidy to come in now, and we have roughly 40 applications for projects in-house now.
Yeah, so the pace is quickened, in response to the drought setting. And I wonder, you don't have to answer this now, but one of the big picture questions is, how are we doing on our goals, which are ambitious in the recycled water policy, and in terms of meeting those goals of millions of acre feet by 2020 and 2030? You don't have to answer that now, but it seems like these type of tools are going to really enable the whole community, local and state and federal level, to make a dent in those goals.
Indeed. I look forward to coming back in 3 to 4 years with those numbers.
Next year. It's bad enough we're not getting them this year. and that's, Rich, if you're watching, that's to you as well. In addition, the salt nutrient plans, I noticed that there was a report on salt nutrient plans in Tom's monthly update. And is that information as to where salt nutrient plans are getting processed into the basin plans? Is that is that information coming to you?
No, that doesn't come directly to us. That's a part of the requirement with the discharge permit and the water recycling requirements, typically an RB function. Although the general permit, we may be able to see some of that, but we typically see that as a requirement and don't explore that too much further.
Well, that as we follow up on the salt nutrient plans, particularly with regard to recycled water, which is where it came in, but it also covers a lot of the other money that you were talking about that's in Prop 1, and also groundwater. And so we probably need to be making sure, particularly as the plans are, many of them are being finalized, and then there are a lot of big gaping holes. We need to be looking at some, you don't need to, but the rest of the staff need to be looking at those gaping holes where we don't have salt nutrient information that we need, and figure out what to do about that. Thank you.
Before the speakers get up to comment on this item, there's one little clarification. As I was following Dan's numbers, last Thursday, the Joint Conference Committee actually stripped out $270 million of the recycled fund funding that was to be provided to the board. I haven't gone line by line through the budget that was enacted or adopted yesterday by the legislature, but it appears that it carried through with that conference recommendation. I think the thought was to avoid the board encumbering all of the funds this fiscal year and to allow some projects who aren't quite ripe to at least be able to compete in subsequent years. So that will slow down a little bit of progress in this field, but there's still a lot of money going out the door.
It just means that those who come forward are probably going to need the revolving loan fund even more.
Headline, fear of government moving too quickly. Who would have thunk? Sorry. Any other comments before we go to speakers? Actually, I want to thank the team, Dan, David, Bethany, and others for just doing a superbly professional job on everything. I have to say, I love your briefings. So just very thoughtful. You've thought of everything and you present it really well. Thank you.